Okay, thank you. You've seen a message from the Chief Executive there. Please feel free to use the chat box if you so wish. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our Learning and Skills Scrutiny Committee. It's a committee which I've sat on now for numerous years, but obviously we've got some new councillors now, some existing councillors, but it's an exciting balance to move ahead with this very, very important scrutiny committee. It's on Zoom. It creates a little bit of difficulty getting to know each other. I'm going to suggest at this stage that we go around the room. We'll go through the councillors first. If the councillors can just give their name and perhaps the ward they represent, and perhaps those councillors that sat on this committee before just indicate that. And then we'll just go through the offices so that the offices are clear to all our new members and what their role in education is. I'll start it off. I'm Councillor Gwynfor Thomas. I represent the Llanson Pride ward. As I mentioned before, I've sat on education scrutiny, certainly for the whole term of the last council and a couple of years before that when it was called something else. I'm just going to go down the list and hopefully we'll pick up. Councillor Bryn, Bore da Bryn.
Pnawn da Gwynfor.
Pnawn
da pawb arall. Cynghorydd Bryn Davies ydw i. Dwi'n cynrychioli ardal. Banwy Llanfihangel a Llanoddyn reit yng ngogledd Powys. So dwi wedi bod yn eistedd ar pwyllgor y craffu addysg ers 5 mlynedd rwan. Diolch. There is translation, is that? Just checking.
Diolch, Bryn. Members, there was a good opportunity then to pick up the translation. Was there anybody having trouble with the translation so that we can rectify that before we go any further? Okay, I'm assuming everybody. Councillor Liz.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Liz Reinenberg and I represent the St Mary ward of Brecon. Oh, no, I don't actually. I represent Brecon East now, changing boundaries.
Well done, Liz. Councillor Aled.
And pawb, Aled Davies, dwi o'r ardal Llanrhaeadr yr Mochnan Llansilyn yn bellach yn y gogledd na hyd yn oed Bryn. Ond dwi wedi bod ar cabinet am y 5 mlynedd dwytha ac wedi gwrando ar lot o cyfarfodydd scrutiny dros y blynyddoedd. Diolch yn fawr.
Thank you. Diolch yn fawr, Councillor Aled. Councillor Ian.
Morning, good afternoon, everybody. Councillor Ian McIntosh from the SG Hondi Isaf and Llandew ward. This is the first time on this committee, but this is the second term for me as a county councillor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ian. Councillor Lucy.
Good afternoon, Llandar. I'm Councillor Lucy Roberts. I represent Llandrinio ward and I've been on this committee for the previous term of the council.
Next on my list is Councillor Pete, obviously not a member of this committee, but I'll let Councillor Pete introduce himself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Councillor Pete Roberts. I'm Councillor for Llandrin South and portfolio holder for Learning Powys. I was the former chair of scrutiny in this committee for the past 5 years, and I wish you luck, Gwynfor, in your term in the same role.
Thank you, Councillor Pete. And I echo the thoughts with yourself as well. Hope you enjoy your term as portfolio for this for education. I'm just looking down the room. I've got Councillor David Thomas. Same comments are equal to Councillor David. Councillor David, member of the cabinet. I'll let you introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, all. Councillor David Thomas. I represent the Tywi Uchaf ward in the Ystrad Lais area, and I'm currently the cabinet member for finance and corporate transformation.
Good. Councillor Karina.
Hello, I'm a new councillor for Knighton with Bigaldi. Thank you.
Welcome, Karina. Councillor Jeff.
Hello, Councillor Jeff Morgan, Knighton Valley. First time on this committee.
Welcome, Jeff. Look forward to working with you. Councillor Jeremy.
Thanks. Yeah, so Jeremy Thorpe, Forden and Montgomery ward. and new to the council this term.
Welcome, Jeremy. I've got Councillor Matt.
Hi everyone. So yeah, I'm Councillor Matt Beecham. I'm one of the members for the Crical with Cwmdi and Trethow wards, and I'm also a new councillor as well.
Good. Welcome, Matt. And I got finally Councillor Adam. If there's any other councillor after, please speak up. Councillor Adam.
Thank you, Gwynfor. Yes, I'm Adam Kennelly. I'm joined the ranks of new councillors at Pascal Council. I'm councillor for Newtown and Llanflecain ward.
Yeah, welcome, Councillor Adam. Are there any other councillors that we need to... Oh, sorry, I do apologise, Gareth. Councillor Gareth, I missed you on the list.
Prynawn da pawb, I'm Cynghorydd Gareth Jones. I'm councillor for Llanflecain and Llanerfol. I was on this committee in the first year of the previous term, but then we moved sideways. So, yeah, deal.
Yeah, thank you, Gareth. Apologies there. I do believe that's all the councillors now, and I think the makeup of the committee actually is finalised with Councillor David Meredith, who's not with us today. We've got numerous officers with us. I think on this occasion we'll ask the officers to introduce themselves so that we know what their role in education is, because some of the officers will be new to our committee. I'm going to go down the list as before. Emma, you're top of the list. Emma Palmer.
Brynhawn da, good afternoon. So I'm Emma Palmer. I'm Director of Corporate Services. I'm also the Corporate Lead for Transforming Education. Been working closely with Lynette and Marianne in particular, and of course Lynette's and George's wider team for the last few years. Chair, if I may, really looking forward to working with you all. Just noting how many new members are on this scrutiny committee. Maybe I can be as bold as to say perhaps a briefing would be a suggestion for a forward work programme around the strategy and the transformation agenda. Thank you.
Yeah, you're quite right, Emma. We are having a short briefing session after the conclusion of today's recorded meeting. So if you can hang about for that, that'd be great. I've got Georgie next on my list.
My name's Georgie Bevan. I'm the Head of Education, and I oversee the SSMT and work closely with Emma and Lynette in school service.
Good. Thank you, Georgie. Catherine?
Brynhawn da. Not officially an officer, I'm a co-opted member. I am a parent governor of Ysgol Brochynllaeth in Llansilin, having moved here a year and a half ago. So thank you for having me.
Welcome, Georgie. I do apologise there. I should have picked up on that. And yes, we've got some other co-opted members who will them well. And if you bear with me, Margaret and Sarah, we'll come to you when I get down my list, if that's okay. I do apologise. Mary, I've got next on my list.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Mary Thomas. I'm the schools finance manager, so I lead the team that supports all the schools in terms of finance and budgets, really, okay. And also work on the transformation.
Thank you, Mary. My list is disappearing fastly. I've got Sarah.
Hi all, yeah, I'm a parent governor for the secondary schools, and I think it's now the all through schools.
Okay, thank you, Sarah. Sarah's a member of our committee, so let's just make it clear on that. Margaret, we'll take you next, if that's okay.
I'm the diocesan representative on this committee, and I've been on the committee for quite some significant time.
Thank you, Margaret. So Margaret's a member of this committee as well. Right, I've lost my list, but I'm just going to go off my list. We've got Marianne with us. And Marianne, if you just say a few short words.
Yeah, pnawn da, pawb. Marianne Evans, Service Manager for the Transforming Education Programme. So I work very, very closely with Emma and Lynette and the team, Georgie, and I lead the transformation team. So I've got a pool of staff that work very hard on this programme. So I'm looking forward to having lots of discussions with you over the forthcoming term.
Diolch, Marianne. I've got Eirig.
Prynawn da pawb, good afternoon everyone. Eirig Towns, I'm the service manager for school improvement. So one of the 5 service managers within the school service. Marianne is one, Sally will introduce herself as well, Anwen and Hayley are the other 2.
That's a good point for you to come in there, Sally.
Well, Prynhawn pawb, Sally Llewellyn dwi, Service Manager for Curriculum for Wales and Professional Learning. So I lead a small team of professional learning staff, but work closely with the School Improvement Advisory team as well to support schools with Curriculum for Wales and all professional learning needs.
Good, thank you for that. Lynette, I've seen you on the list. I should have introduced you ahead of all our other officers.
No problem at all, no problem. So I'm Lynette Lovell and I'm Director of Education. I was Chief Interim Education Officer in 2019 after the inspection, and I've led the service then for the last coming up 3 years now in our service improvements. So and then I was made Director of Education last year in October, November time. So that's me. Thank you, Councillor Gwynfor.
Thank you, Lynette. Please forgive me, are there any other officers which I haven't introduced? Okay, we didn't do such a bad, but just bearing in mind when we were introducing them officers that there was 3 co-opted members that were in there as well, our lay members, so they're members of our committee as well. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot of faces to remember. We won't have all these officers with us in every meeting. They tend to duck in and out when they've got relevant to their department in it. So I think it was good on this occasion to just get round everybody. Members, I'm going to move on to the agenda now, if that's okay. Item 1 in your agenda is election of vice chair. Members, you've been asked to submit nominations. I
haven't had any nominations at all, Chair.
Okay then, we're looking for a nomination from the floor then, members. Entirely in your own hands. I'm not that bad a chair to work with. Members, do you have a nomination for the floor? I hope this isn't a sign of things to come.
Shall I start the ball rolling, Chair? Can I suggest Councillor Gareth Jones?
Councillor Gareth Jones has been proposed.
I would second Gareth.
Councillor Lewis is seconding that. Councillor Gareth is in the room.
Yeah, thank you for that. I'm currently Vice Chair of Planning, which I believe rules me out to be Vice Chair in any other committee, but thank you for the nomination.
Okay, I'm not aware of that ruling, but if that's your wish. Do we have another nomination?
Chair, we had a similar situation this morning in health and care, and the chair at that time decided to defer it for a couple of months until new members certainly got their feet under the table with an understanding of what the committee was about, and then we could come back to it as an option just in case you want to use it.
Yeah, no, there's a suggestion there. Councillor Adam, you've got your hand up.
I need to really endorse that. As a newcomer, it's very difficult to have any sense of the contribution one could make to it as a vice chair. So if that's a possibility, that will get my support.
Members, you've heard that feeling. Is that the direction that you wish to take?
Yeah, happy to do that.
Judging on your silence, that's what we'll take. Item 2 on your agenda is to receive apologies for absence. We've received apologies from Councillor David Meredith. Are there any others?
Also from Councillor Sarah-Jane Beecham as well.
Okay.
And I will have to leave after about an hour, I'm afraid. Can I just register that?
Thank you for letting us know on that, Jeremy. Jeremy, if you just let us know when you leave the meeting, we'll record it in the meetings. Thank you. Are there any other apologies or comments on attendance? If not, we'll move on to item 3 on your agenda, disclosures of interest. Is there anybody got a disclosure of interest, or has anybody got any query that they'd like answered at this stage?
Councillor Gwynfor, I'd like to raise that in relation to item 8, I'm a parent of a child who attends Llanbedr Church in Wales School.
Okay, we'll seek some advice on that. What is the best approach that Matt should take on that?
Right, oh, sorry, Chair, I was just checking my microphone was on. I think in relation to that, that'll obviously be a direct impact. So I think that's a personal and prejudicial interest. So I think my advice would be for Councillor Matt not to take part in that. And certainly what I can do, as I've done previously in Zoom, is to move Councillor Beecham to the waiting room so he won't take part in the discussion at all, but then I can bring him back in at the end for the briefing.
Councillor Marty, are you happy with that advice?
Yes, I thought that would be the case. Thank you, Wyn.
Thank you, Councillor Marty. We'd be grateful if you declared when the item it comes on the agenda then. Thank you. Item 4 on your agenda, declarations of party whip. Members, it's there, it's clear to read. It's there. I have to ask, are there any disclosures at this stage? I'll judge on your silence. Thank you very much. Item 5 on the agenda is curriculum for Wales and professional learning. We to receive and consider the report of the cabinet member for learning powers. We've got an officer that's prepared to us. Sally Llewellyn has prepared a report for the committee. Councillor Pete, is there anything you wish to say before we move on to going through the report?
Thank you, Gwynfor. At this point, as this is very much a technical report, I was going to pass across to Sally as the lead officer, who can introduce the report to members and then take any questions. With your permission, Chair, I'd like to release Sally back to other work at the end of this item.
Yeah, that's, if that's Sally's desire, that's absolutely fine. Sally, welcome to the meeting. If you could take us through your report, please.
Diolch, Councillor Gwynfor. So the report sets out to advise the Learning and Skills Scrutiny Panel on the introduction of the curriculum for Wales to schools and settings across Wales in September 2022. So for our primary schools, rollout will commence in September 2022. Secondary schools who wish to roll out the curriculum to Year 7 are encouraged to do so, but this will not be mandatory until 2023, when rollout to Year 7 and 8 will happen at the same time. So a school's curriculum, when we talk about curriculum for Wales, is everything a learner experiences in pursuit of the 4 purposes. So it's not simply what we teach, but how we teach, and crucially with the new curriculum, why we are teaching it. There are 27 mandatory statements of what matters in the framework across 6 areas of learning and experience. So the process of exploring and revisiting these statements enables our learners in Powys to develop ever deeper knowledge over the learning continuum and to progress to a more sophisticated understanding of the key knowledge, ideas, and principles that sit within each area of learning and experience. The curriculum framework, as it's called, requires schools to design their own curriculum and assessment arrangements. And it's acknowledged that this is a challenge for many schools, and an even greater challenge given the circumstances schools have found themselves in over the COVID pandemic. An added element to consider for small schools is their capacity to manage the considerable workload of engaging with the wide range of professional learning required by the Curriculum for Wales. This in addition to the professional learning required by the wider reform agenda, such as additional learning needs transformation. Most of our schools in Powys, I'm pleased to say, are engaging very positively with Curriculum for Wales. And feedback from our schools informs us that they consider the professional learning on offer in Powys to be of high quality and easily accessible. But allocating adequate time for school staff to effectively engage with professional learning resources has been challenging in the recent circumstances schools have found themselves in. So my team, the professional learning team in Powys, along with the School Improvement Advisory team, meet regularly to discuss the readiness of all schools for curriculum rollout. What this allows us to do is to triage the need and provide a bespoke menu of support for each school. Support from local authority officers for Curriculum for Wales rollout is also complemented by the work of 19 pedagogy leads who are drawn from a wide range of schools across Powys. There are 3 pedagogy leads for each of the 6 areas of learning and experience. And if you've worked out that doesn't quite add up, that's because there are 4 in the science and technology AOLE. So we have an extra pedagogy lead in the science and technology AOLE. Powys have invested in professional learning, and they are providing their practitioners with a high quality entitlement that is easily accessible. We've done some analytical work on the Powys Professional Learning Offer Google site, and we've recorded that the total number of page views between October 2021 to June 2022 has been 18,661 views. The Curriculum for Wales page of the site has received the highest number of views at 3,127, suggesting that the level of practitioner interest in this area is vast. User-friendly short recordings have been produced to explain how the site can be accessed and navigated. And these recordings have been shared with a wide range of stakeholders, not just head teachers to pass on into their schools, but with governors as well. We advertise our professional learning opportunities through the weekly education newsletter, through the Powys Professional Learning Team Twitter account, which has currently got 178 followers. However, the professional learning team are absolutely focused on ensuring that all practitioners are accessing professional learning as their entitlement. Ensuring teachers have the time for professional learning is a real challenge and can increase workload significantly for teachers, particularly if they've got 1 or more areas of learning and experience in which they're leading. Evaluation surveys, which we collect frequently on all our professional learning offer, use a model of evaluation called the Kirkpatrick model, and a full detail is presented in the report about how that model works. After each training event, we ensure that the workshops are appropriate to the practitioner's needs and are having the desired impact. So as a team, our next steps over the coming months are to develop a much deeper understanding of the impact of the work of the professional learning team, who've only been in post this academic year. And we will be gaining a sense of that impact through our visits to schools alongside school improvement advisory partners. We need to develop a full analysis of the intelligence gathered by school service staff from the additional cluster inset day, which was held earlier this week on Monday, the 27th of June, as that will be able to inform our planning for the staggered cluster inset days that we have planned in the autumn term. These sessions will provide opportunities for the Powys Professional Learning Team to support each cluster face-to-face with the next stage of curriculum design work, which includes deepening an understanding of assessment and progression. The Powys Professional Learning Offer for 2022-2023, so the coming year, has already been published for schools in advance of September to ensure that our schools are able to effectively incorporate the support on offer with their own identified professional learning needs. This offer needs to be regularly updated and effectively disseminated to all staff in Powys. Happy to take any questions that anybody might have in relation to Curriculum for Wales or professional learning.
Thank you, Sally. Members, you've obviously got the report in front of you as well. Members, Sally, we've got questions already. I was just going to invite questions. Members, anything that's anybody unclear on at this stage, no question is unaskable. So please appeal. Margaret, I got you first. Your mic is still, there we go, Margaret.
Yeah, so we find that. Thank you for a very informative report. But the thing I'm going to raise is an issue I've had of concern about for quite a long time. Now, preschool in approved settings, whilst not compulsory, is for a large number of children in Powys their first introduction to education. And there is, they are introducing the new curriculum in September, along with all other educational establishments. And I find the report informative about schools, but I really don't feel we always have joined up thinking that links schools and the preschool educational approved provision. And I feel that reports should have reference to both. And I looked through this, and much of it is very informative about schools, but there is little to compare with preschool. And I think it's unfortunate. I feel that the two should come together in this sort of document. And looking at the last page, the next steps, 5 identified next steps, nothing of that links to preschool. So it's that particular area I'm just raising as a concern.
Thank you, Margaret.
There is additional guidance for preschools, a sort of a pre-curriculum for Wales document that I could well have included in that report. So I think that's a valid point that you make, Margaret, that the report doesn't engage with the work of the early years foundation phase team. I don't know if Irig wants to come in there, who line manages that team. I do work closely with that team around developments for Curriculum for Wales. They have presented on our professional learning offer opportunities around child development, around building schema, and I work with that team as well to ensure there is sort of cross-phase conversation happening with early years settings, with preschools and with the school settings. So there is additional information available for Curriculum for Wales in relation to preschools, and that conversation is happening within the local authority. It should have been perhaps reflected in that report, and I apologise that it wasn't. Irig, I don't know if you want to mention that.
Yeah, sorry, as you mentioned there, our foundation phase team are supporting our settings with that. We actually were one of only 2 authorities that piloted some of the early years curriculum developments in Powys. So, you know, we've actually been at some of the cutting edge of this and trialing some of those aspects in some of our settings across Powys. So we have hopefully been able to provide support for them in terms of the ways forward in their education in earlier settings and new curriculum for them.
So the structure is different.
The support,
I can see who's, you know, the people involved with supporting in schools, but I'm assuming they're not supporting in settings. So
no, the support for settings is coming through their foundation phase advisory teachers. So the team that are there.
So we have no knowledge of that in this report.
No, it's not reflected in that report. No.
Right.
Thank you. Thank you, diolch yn fawr, Irig. Councillor Lucy.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Sally, for a very informative report. I just wanted to draw a bit more on the fact that you said that most schools in Powys are engaging positively with the Curriculum for Wales, which suggests to me that not all schools are engaging positively with it. I mean, you talk about the terrific amount of training that you're providing for schools, and I understand that time to access that training can be an issue, particularly for small schools. So I would just like to ask, is that the major issue, or are there schools that still really aren't in the right sort of headspace to engage with the new curriculum and haven't really got the right frame of mind, if you like, to get into it?
I think it's fair to say that all schools are engaging, and perhaps we should have been more affirmative in our language there to say all schools are engaging. I suppose what I was trying to reflect was the continuum that schools are on in terms of their capacity to engage with all aspects of the Curriculum for Wales guidance, given how vast it is. You know, I would say all schools in Powys have developed a vision for Curriculum for Wales. All schools have engaged with the 4 purposes. I would be confident to say that. We have to prepare reports for the Minister on readiness of schools in Powys and in our work with Ceredigion as part of the Mid Wales Partnership as well. And the statistics we've returned to the Minister are very high around some of those areas. I think the COVID pandemic has been really damaging to the rollout, the journey to rollout, and the minister's aware of that as well, and has commented on September simply being the start of the journey and getting schools to a position where they are ready to begin on that journey in September, but certainly wouldn't expect them to have everything sewn up and in place in terms of their curriculum design, in terms of their assessment arrangements. And that's why secondary schools were given the option to delay by a year as well, should they choose to do so and come on board the following year with year 7 and year 8 together. And I think nationally the figure is something like 45% of secondary schools have adopted the curriculum for this September, and the 55% have actually delayed until the following year. So I think the pandemic, it has a lot to answer for in terms of frustrating practitioners in their ability to be able to concentrate on curriculum design when really operational practicalities became the focus rather than the strategic vision that they might have put in place. But it was a very successful day on Monday where all clusters in Powys came together, the secondary schools and the primary schools coming together with practitioners, with teaching assistants, to talk about, often a vision was a priority there, the vision for Curriculum for Wales, sharing their visions, sharing their understanding of what a purpose-led curriculum is all about, and beginning to start to really think about the continuum of learning from 3 to 16 and having cross-phase conversations about planning for curriculum in a way that they never have before. And that we've had that feedback from 50 members of the school service team went out across Powys on Monday to join up with those clusters. And we had a school service meeting this morning where we asked for feedback on Monday, and there was an overwhelming positive sense of togetherness, I suppose, school service with the clusters, and the feedback from that, how meaningful it was to be able to have that conversation, or primary teachers, secondary teachers, school service staff all coming together on that journey together. But it is a journey, and we are all at different points along that continuum.
Thank you. I mean, I understand that the curriculum is supposed to be specific to each individual school, but are there opportunities for some of the smaller schools to work together to design elements of the curriculum so that they're not having to repeat the work that they're doing?
Definitely, and that's why that cluster working is so important. If we're going to be really thinking meaningfully about 6 areas of learning and experience, and a teacher might find themselves in a 2-teacher school, to spread that burden across clusters as well makes that job so much easier, in terms of within that cluster there are nominated maths and numeracy leads, languages, literacy and communication leads, humanities leads, etc., who can sort of collectively carry the burden of that professional learning and that planning, if you like. Obviously there needs to be strong lines of communication then to feed that back across those AOLEs and back into the cluster. But working together is certainly an approach we've taken as an authority to ensure that everyone is supported with the challenges that the Curriculum for Wales presents.
Thank you, Sally.
Thank you, Sally. Thank you, Councillor Lucy. I've got Councillor Matt, followed by Councillor Gareth.
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you to Sally as well for your presentation and the report. So, I guess in my other job as such, I'm a senior sort of HE practitioner, and I've taught in HE for 10+ years, and actually reading and doing a bit of research on a Curriculum for Wales, I see it's quite an inspiring way forwards, and hopefully something that's going to be beneficial to our learners, because from my reflections working within HE, quite often students come into year 1 and they've always been taught subjects within their own subject silos, and they don't appreciate how these different disciplines interlink with one another, which makes it particularly challenging as a programme leader for a joint awards degree as well, to get them to appreciate that. So I think that's a really positive step forward for pupils in Wales. My question is around the sort of 6 areas for learning and experience, and I guess it's kind of an extension to what Councillor Lucy was asking about. So I'm very mindful that the vast majority of schools in Powys really are defined as, would be defined as small schools under the Welsh Government legislation, which I believe the figure is 91. My thinking then is that in the vast majority of schools, staff, as in teachers, are going to have to take at least 2 areas under their hat, and having been in that position myself where you have to take, well, you know, I've taken law and business and law and criminology. It is a lot of work that is placed on your shoulders. So my question is around the support that's put in place. I mean, in Powys, are we looking at also utilising the skills and experience of the teaching assistants within those settings as well? Sort of the teaching assistants, you know, typically come from different backgrounds, have skills, qualities that they can bring to the table. A pertinent example, and I hope Councillor Sarah Jane will forgive me, because I know she's not in this meeting, but her background was she was a senior practitioner as an occupational therapist who went into being a teaching assistant at Gilwan Primary School across the border in Monmouthshire, and last year she's very much integrated as part of a team looking at the health and well-being area of learning and utilising her experiences and skills within the mental health setting that she used to work in. So I'd be interested to know a Powys taking a similar approach and using the whole teaching team as well as the support, the teaching assistant support as well to help teachers get to grips with what, as I say, in most cases will likely be more than one area that they'll have to take responsibility for.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Matt. Yes, certainly TAs extremely important to supporting the teaching and learning that is going on in relation to the new curriculum, which is why we were very keen to promote teaching assistants attending the cluster inset day on Monday. And it was really wonderful to be up in Welshpool cluster and in a room in one of the breakout AOLE rooms where we were looking at the curriculum. I was really pleased to see that there was a teacher from a primary sat alongside TA from the same primary, another teacher from primary sat alongside TA from the primary. So certainly in support and standing alongside those teachers, an extremely valuable resource, and a huge priority for the Minister, again, in terms of the professional learning entitlement for Wales, which is a new entitlement that is being consulted on and discussed at the moment in this summer term, led by Kevin Palmer and the professional learning team in Welsh Government. And that makes it quite categorical that professional learning for teaching assistants is a vital part of the agenda moving forward, and that with TAs making up nearly 50% of the workforce, it's really important that they are involved in all these important conversations around teaching and learning. Obviously, there are differences in responsibilities for teachers and teaching assistants, so perhaps not leading on an AOLE, because obviously we've got you know, sort of things to take into consideration from a legal point of view there, but certainly supporting, galvanising, adding value, adding capacity. I very much see the value that TAs bring to this experience as crucial to our rollout of Curriculum for Wales in Powys. So yes, TA is very important in the mix of things.
Yeah, thank you for the clarity, Sally. Yes, fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Gareth has dropped his hand now, so I'm assuming, unless there's anything different, he hasn't got a question now. Are there any other questions on this report? No. If not, I'm going to thank you, Sally, for bringing the report to us. It's been mentioned; it's quite a comprehensive report, and it's quite self-explanatory in places. So thank you, Sally. Members, the report is there for us to note. So are you happy to move on with that in our minds? Thank you very much. Sally, I understand that you've got other pressing duties, so thank you for being with us today. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. Members, I'm looking at the agenda now. We move on to item 6 on your report. To consider the report of the Cabinet Member for Learning Powys in relation to Llanby Hangle School. Members, this was brought to my attention last week that it's very similar to item 8. Obviously, we can't take them. Both were due for Cabinet this week, and I was given the opportunity whether to bring them to scrutiny or not. I made a decision that it was advisable that these reports came before scrutiny to see if there was any comments which we would like to pass on to Cabinet in their deliberations. Councillor Pete, am I coming to you? Comment. Councillor Ian has got his hand up already.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just a quick question for Wyn, really. I think many people know I've campaigned to keep both this school and the school at Item 8 open. Where do I stand with regards to having to declare an interest?
Not actually a decision maker on this at all. The report would be for Cabinet, obviously, take the decision.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
On this. You know, if you're a decision maker, there's issues then around predetermination, etc. if you're involved in any campaigns. But this is a different scenario whatsoever. We're just looking at the report and then making observations and recommendations to the Cabinet.
Yeah. Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that, Councillor Ian. Councillor Allard.
Sorry, Chair, I couldn't hear what Wyn was saying. Was something around decision maker. Was that previous decision maker? So,
sorry, Ali, it might have been that my microphone was under my chin again. I was saying that the scrutiny committee obviously is not a decision maker on this. You're merely making recommendations through to the Cabinet in terms of any observations, any recommendations on it. So therefore, anybody who's got involved in the campaign, that wouldn't be an issue for this particular one. It's only when you're taking a decision, it would be an issue. However, you've now raised the issue about previous decision makers. I'm trying to think when this one was actually taken. It was earlier part of this year, wasn't it? It may be better that you don't take part, Alid, I think would be my advice, because you were part of the decision-making process previously, if that's acceptable to you, but it's your decision at the end of the day.
That's a little bit
Emma's Emma's trying to get in, so we'll take some advice off Emma.
Thanks, Chair. If that is the position of the Cabinet, then that would apply to Councillor Ian McIntosh as well, who was also a Cabinet member at the time of the decisions that were taken around, or part of the decisions that were taken around Llanfihangel, Rydaithen, and also Llanbedr. Just for consistency.
That's a fair point, Emma. Thank you for that. It's an issue of not scrutinising a decision which you were party to taking or involved in taking part in, which actually you're not allowed to do under the Code of Conduct. But it's new and fairly fresh rather than historical. If it was 12, 18 months ago, I don't think there would be that much of an issue. But as is this year, I think it becomes more apparent in my mind. But of course, I can only give advice. This is my advice to members. It's up to you whether you accept it or not.
Wyn, Chair, may I?
Councillor Pate.
Yeah, to my mind, this is not revisiting the decision that the scrutiny in this session is not directly revisiting the decision that has been taken. It is scrutiny of a new decision. And if you look at the actual Cabinet proposal, it is to actually defer the original decision. So we're not at this point bringing the original decision into question. We are bringing forward a proposal to defer it to enable some additional investigative work to be undertaken. If we come back with a different proposal at the end of that process, at that point, I would suggest Wyn's advice might apply, because at that point, I would be bringing a paper to you which is reaching a different conclusion to the one that had been reached by the previous Cabinet. That's my observations, that's not advice, and I would look to Wyn for comment and advice to Councillors Alid and Councillors Ian.
Members, let's not get bogged down on this now. At the end of the day, we can make observations, we can take advice. At the end of the day, it is down to each individual member if they wish to be a part of this debate. I think we'll leave it at that. Alid, are you looking to get back in there?
Yes, just very quickly. I tend to agree with Peter. It's you know, looking to use additional budget to defer, not change a decision.
Aled, if that's your view, that's a decision which you as yourself can make. I'm happy to move on now because the same comment for you, Councillor Ria.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think we're here obviously to make or to scrutinise the decision to delay this rather than ultimately change anything. So I agree with Pete's observations, really. I think if we get to a point where a decision has to be made, therefore, at that point, we should perhaps not take part.
I withdraw my original suggestion, Chair, because I think that's good advice for Councillor Pete. It is a very different scenario.
Okay, let's move on, shall we? Councillor Pete, I'm going to come back to you now to speak about this report.
Thank you, Gwynfor. But before I do, I've had a request to ask permission to release IRIG for the rest of the meeting.
Yeah, IRIG has given his apologies in the message box, so that's absolutely fine.
Thank you. As previously mentioned, this is not a proposal to change the previous Cabinet's decision. This is a proposal to look at certain aspects of the previous decision in respect of Llanfihangel in the light of additional information that will be available. The proposal being put before you is to delay the implementation of the decision reached by the previous Cabinet for one academic year. This will enable additional works to be undertaken to create a report into looking at Welsh language provision within the wider East Radnorshire catchment. This is in keeping with the concerns expressed by scrutiny in respect of the Llanfihangel proposal, but also in respect of the WESP, where questions were raised as to whether Prestine as a border school would be the most successful location for the establishment of Welsh medium within this wider area. So the first aim of this proposal is to provide time to undertake more detailed research within the community and within the wider East Radnorshire catchment, and also to take on board the new information that is expected towards the end of this year in terms of output area data on the Welsh language coming out of the 2021 census. The second area that obviously coming out of this proposal to explore the Welsh language provision is an opportunity for us to look closer at the community impacts of the school closure and the onward use of the school's estate were the decision to remain intact. So we're also looking to use this time to look in more detail at options for using the site for the community, which may actually then provide a model for if this situation were to occur in future as other parts of the transformation process. At that point, with that as an introduction to the background, I'll pass it back to you, Chair, for any questions. I will answer ones that are of a more political nature. Officers may wish to take the more technical questions.
Thank you very much. Members, are you happy to go to questions at this stage or comments? I've got Councillor Gareth first, I believe.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of questions, but one that really concerns me is how much this is ultimately going to cost Powys, whereas everyone here wants to protect rural schools, but ultimately these decisions were taken for a number of reasons previously, and although it's coming out of the delegated budget that's available to officers, ultimately it will affect all learners throughout Powys. I'll leave that there, but the question I'd like to ask is, as we are so far down the line, how many pupils that are currently in this school have already applied to go to another school? So they will be taken in, budgets will have been prepared for those learners going to other schools, and how will this impact on work that's already been done? Thank you.
I was told earlier today that no pupils and no parents have made an application to move their pupil to another school at this point. I'm seeing a nod on camera from Georgie. There has been no applications to move pupils to another school.
Okay, that's good, I think, Chair, if I may come back. I find that surprising, but okay, so there won't be a cost implication from there moving onwards.
At this stage, there are the parents and governors have made no commitments to move pupils. Therefore, there will be no impact on the planned budgets of other schools because they are not at this point expecting any pupils. There will be an impact in the budget process next financial year because there will be an element covering the summer term that will be covered within the allocation of funding that otherwise would have been available to schools. This year's costs are being covered out of contingency budgets.
Councillor Bryn.
Helo, fi?
Yeah, Councillor Bryn, please.
Okay, diolch. Dari Peter ddim ateb cwestiwn cyntaf Gareth, sef beth yw'r niferoedd o disgyblion sydd yn ysgol Llanfair Henol Rhyddithon ar y funud. Fysa'n gallu ateb hwnna, os gwelwch yn dda. Ac dwi'n amlwg yn croesawu'n yr angen I darparu addysg cyfan Cymraeg yn dwyrain Sir Faes yfed ac ardal diffeithwch arall ydy ardal Crickhowell wrth gwrs. Oes gennych chi y syniad yn eich pen be di pa fath o niferoedd ydych chi'n barod I dderbyn fel ysgol hyfyw cychwynnol. Yn amlwg mae angen cychwyn y tyfu mae'r ysgolion yma os mae'n cael cyfle I ffynnu. So dyna'r ddau gwestiwn sgynna I. Diolch.
Councillor Pete, did you get the gist of that?
Yeah, the question on numbers, could I look to officers to come back to me with the current number on the roll? I believe Marianne?
Yeah, 36 on roll, 34.
Marianne, we're not picking you up there, sorry.
Not picking me up at all? Hang on. Let's have a look.
That's better.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, that's much better.
Oh, that's weird. Okay. Yes, 36 on roll, and I believe 34 in September.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Thank you. In Bryn, in respect of the Welsh language side, the whole point of delaying this implementation is to gain a proper assessment of the potential numbers of Welsh language pupils within the catchment, to assess whether there is viability and to look at how we would manage a progression from where the school is now to a fully Welsh medium school under the definitions that the Minister is putting into effect from September. I don't want to comment further at this point because I don't want to end up in a position where I'm prejudicing any decisions that we make and putting us into a position under the schools code where I've given you a figure today, which means I can't legally move forward with something in the future.
Bryn, I'm giving you an opportunity to come back. Councillor Jeff, you're having difficulty picking up the translation. Have you got English on your toolbar on the bottom line? If you look across the bottom, you've got mute, stop video, participants, chat, share screen, raise hand, record in English.
It's the interpretation button, Chair. So
I'll get it. Don't worry, I'll fiddle, but I'll get it now. Okay.
If you click on the interpretation button, Councillor Jeff, then actually select English and you should be okay.
Okay, cheers, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Councillor Bryn, do you wish to come back?
No, mae ateb yna'n ddigonol am rwan, diolch.
Okay, just before we move on, Councillor Gareth has had, of the 34, how many of those are in the catchment area? Do you have that detail, Marianne, or not? Or from within the catchment area?
From the pupil numbers that when we went out to consult on, more just over 50%.
I can't hear Marianne again, Chair.
Yeah, no, she's very faint, isn't she? I'm not sure what's going on, Marianne.
No, I don't either.
That's better.
Come closer. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah, right, okay. Yeah, when we did the consultation, more than half of the pupils at the school lived closer to other schools, if that makes sense.
So a 50-50 split, we can make the assumption.
Yeah, just a little bit over the 50%.
I've got Councillor Lucy, followed by Councillor Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a number of questions and comments. Like Gareth, I'm concerned about the cost implications to the rest of learners in Powys. And I wondered, one of the reasons given for delaying the closure was the transfer of the school building to the community. And I wondered why that couldn't be considered outside the school closure programme, because whether the school closes or not, you could still look at what happens to the building and whether it's in some way gifted to the community or provide some kind of community provision over the period of the next year. That I don't see that the two have to be tied together. I also wondered that there was mention made of the changes in transition arrangements, and I accept that there'll be more time for transition arrangements. But I wondered what actually might be different in transition arrangements in a year's time to that which would be the case now. And also in terms of having Welsh language provision at the school, if one of the reasons for looking at closure of that school was the state of the school building, and I may be misremembering there that that was the case, would that still not be an issue, whether the school was Welsh medium or English medium? Thank you.
Thank you. 3 questions there.
Sorry, I'm just struggling to remember the first question, sorry.
So the first one was about the transfer of the school building to the community and whether that couldn't be done separately.
The point of including that within the report was to commit us to undertaking the work. It's an additional benefit of spending the time to look at the Welsh language side of things. The second question you made was in respect of transition. With the timings on the current proposals, notice would have been given that would have kept staff on until the end of the Christmas term. This enables the school transition to occur at the end of a calendar year, giving staff more opportunity of moving to another job and enabling the pupils to transition at an end point of the year rather than in the middle of a year, so it would be less disruptive. And there was a third question, which I've now forgotten again. Sorry, not doing too well today.
And the third one was about I don't remember how much expenditure was required on the building, but I seem to recall that was one of the reasons why the school was being considered for closure. And if that was the case, wouldn't that still be an issue with it as a Welsh medium school?
Can I look to Emma or Marianne on that, because I hadn't looked at that aspect of the previous paper, so it's not in, the figures are not to my hand immediately.
Chair, I think we'll come back on that element because I haven't got them immediate either, because the content was in the previous papers where the decision was made to close the school. So we'll come back on that. We'll have a quick look now through the previous papers.
I think the key point to remember, Lucy, is that we will be looking at that when we come to taking another decision rather than today. It's something for us to remember for the future. And thank you for bringing that to scrutiny now. It's something we'll make sure that we're considering, but it doesn't directly affect the decision we're taking today.
I totally understand that, Councillor Pete, but obviously we as a scrutiny committee have to balance that with that viewpoint, whether you know we think it's good to postpone in view of that information. Councillor Ian, followed by Councillor Aled.
Can I just comment on that last question, Chair?
Of course you can, David.
Are you referring to the maintenance costs that might be incurred in keeping the school open for the review?
I don't want to take Councillor Lucy's words. I think she thinks that the school will need considerable investment, whether it's a Welsh medium or an English medium. Is that right, Lucy?
Yes.
Yeah, but is that during the period of the review or afterwards? Because the Welsh provision would come afterwards.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's the issue of the expenditure that is needed on maintenance during this coming year. But there's then a question of whether further investment would be needed in order to keep it open as a Welsh medium school. I think Marianne was trying to come in and answer, maybe.
I was. Yeah, if I may, just to say that school building condition wasn't one of the key factors or the key issues with Llanfihangel Rhaethon School. The condition is graded as a B, which is, you know, it's a relatively solid school building. Going forward, yes, you know, if there's a longer term life for the school, there would still be ongoing maintenance costs. I'll just find for you what the maintenance cost is, but I'll need to look through my papers.
I've got them, Marianne. Within section 4.4 of the paper, there refers to £6,000 estimated works for the boiler, and then further £40,000 estimated cost for enclosure of the ground.
Safeguarding issue, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucy. Councillor Ian, followed by Councillor Aled.
Thank you, Chair. I got two questions really. The first one is around the concern that if this goes forward now and people get to hear that we're only considering keeping this school open in 12 months' time to provide Welsh only education, or Welsh, sorry, education through the medium of Welsh, that might then lead to a drop in numbers, because obviously parents who currently send their children there might still prefer to have them taught through the medium of English, which could lead to a decline in pupil numbers, which would then possibly make an even stronger case to close the school in 12 months' time. So what I'm trying to get to is, what figure do you think would be an acceptable figure of pupils to have at that school in 12 months' time, being taught through the medium of Welsh, to justify keeping it open? That's the first question. The second one then is, I think Councillor Pete agreed to take political questions, and this is one. I think probably know what it's going to be, and that is that several members of the new administration did campaign to keep this school open if they got elected, and item number 8 as well. And this isn't that. This is just kicking the can down the road. So I'm just wondering why that change in decision has been made. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, taking the first question, if the school is moving to a Welsh medium school, just as with the proposals for Tregunnon and Ambro Hudgin under the previous administration, it would be a transition. How exactly that transition will come about is something to be considered as part of a proposal to move. That is the usual process. I don't know if Lynette wants to come in and expand on that.
Yeah, what we've, as you said earlier, the Brohadgan and the Dyffryn Trannon proposals were for a staggered approach going through, starting at the foundation phase.
In answer to the political decision, this is looking at the scrutiny, the provision, sorry, let me start again. The position that I took in scrutiny and was taken as the official political line was that there were scrutiny considerations that needed considering and needed to be checked in relation to the wider transformation agenda that the party was pushing forward. At this stage, the appropriate way to move forward with that is to bring those proposals forward, look at and examine them, and take the decision, rather than taking a decision now only for later in the programme to come back and bring the authority back to stage one, spending more cost and more time, and quite frankly, giving pupils and parents false hope in the longer term. So that's quite simply why this has not moved straight to anything else.
Thank you.
Right, okay, thank you. It is different to what people were told, but I'll leave it there. Okay, thank you.
Emma's got her hand up there. I'm going to bring Emma in before Aled, if that's okay.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Apologies for any background noise that you may be picking up, but there's a couple of points that I think I need to clarify. We're not revisiting the proposal here. The school organisation code gives an opportunity to delay the implementation, but we're not looking at a new proposal. We would have to start a new process. So regardless of whether following any review around Welsh medium education as an example, Llanfihangel with Dyfan in its current form would still need to close as a school. So we're still talking school closure in 12 months time, or sorry, it's 12-month delay, so August 2023. And in respect of our process, we recently attended an oral hearing with the court in relation to this school, where there was a request for judicial review. The judicial review was declined by the first judge. We did then attend an oral hearing, which is within the person's right to put forward for an oral hearing that was granted. We attended that oral hearing, and again, the court confirmed that our process was right. So the school organisation code is one that's really important for us to be very well rehearsed in here. This is a delay for 12 months. During that 12 months, we can undertake other aspects of work, but it is a delay. And any new proposals that are put on the table would have to go through due process. So you would be starting again, as Councillor Pete has indicated. Thank you.
Thanks for that clarification, Emma. Councillor Aled.
Gwynfor, may I, before Aled comes in?
Let's go to Councillor Aled now, and bear in mind your remarks, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just very quickly on what Emma said then, the due process of any potential change, would that due process start at the end of the 12 months? Because I do worry about the future of the school post this delay. And got to be clear that Ysgol Trigonon and Brohysgain were much larger schools with a high percentage of Welsh-speaking pupils in them already currently. I'm not sure, you know, the school possibly has an average of about 6 pupils in each year, and I'm not sure how many of those are Welsh-speaking. So you would have very, very small classes within this school if you wanted to do that sort of transition sort of process. There's no doubt this school would have to close to accomplish that. So there's a lot of questions around that. But my main big issue is this is use of educational budget. And there's nothing in this report about the educational outcomes for the children. Additional budget is being put in to delay the process for 12 months, and there's £150,000 it's been of educational budget being top sliced off other schools, other children's education, to just delay the process. I don't understand what educational outcomes this is being achieved for this sum of money. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Pate, now's your opportunity.
Yeah, I'll respond to Aled and then I'll come back to what I was going to say, which is a different matter. Councillor Aled, the intention here is looking very closely at the Welsh medium potential of the East Radnorshire area. We are within the WESP as put forward by the previous administration and largely endorsed by ours. there is a desire to have Welsh medium education at primary level within the East Radnorshire area. We don't know what the level of demand is for that education. We don't know the best location for it. It might be that undertaking research, we find that there is desire there, but it is for provision that could be offered at a large school, or it might be that it is smaller level provision where a school of the nature of the building size of Llanfihangel Rhydython is the most appropriate. So we are focusing very much here on the potential of the WESP and the desire of the 2050 target in terms of Welsh speakers, and looking in this catchment specifically at the fact that this site already has Kilk and TRV, whereas other potential sites do not have that in place already. Your questions are very pertinent to the next paper that would come from this, and that is looking at the viability of a Welsh language offering. But that is where the educational focus is. It is on the potential provision of dedicated Welsh medium education to pupils in East Radnorshire, which currently are unable to access it.
Okay, Marianne has put it, I was just reading it.
Sorry, I had a more fundamental question there, the educational outcomes for the children.
Children are able to be educated through the medium of Welsh at this point. They do not have that opportunity. That is the educational outcome that could be achieved from that children have that opportunity within the catchment.
Okay, I'm just going to develop that further. You know,
I'm sorry.
Sorry, Aled, you wish to come back? Go on, Aled.
Oh yeah, no, I wasn't. When I was talking about educational outcomes, I was talking about the current school as it is now. There's potentially £150,000 being top sliced from other schools, and spent on this school. I would expect to see significant educational outcomes or improvements for that £150,000. Whereas I'm just seeing a delay. This is, I wouldn't describe this as progressive. I don't see any evidence within the report that the educational experts, the officers within the council, being supportive of this policy of delay. I'm thinking it's going to have a negative impact on the potential outcomes for children, not just in this particular school, but in the wider catchment, in the wider Powys, because there will be less funding going to those larger schools where the funding formula had been tweaked to increase the funding formula to those schools where did not benefit as much from the funding formula, basically the larger primary schools. Yeah, and added to that, it would be, back to the Welsh issue, it'd be good to understand what you would see as, if you're opening a new Welsh school, what would be the minimum size for that new Welsh school? How many you would want to see in each year? Would it be 20 in each year, making a school of 120? Or what would you see as a potential? Because opening a new school is a significant commitment. Thank you.
Councillor Ian has asked exactly the same question in the chat box there. What's a viable attendance statistic? And just beyond accessing, Marianne has put in the backlog maintenance is 184,000, 46,000 in the immediate term. I read that as in the short term. Any comment on a viable number for Welsh medium education, Councillor Pete?
As I said previously, I'm not going to prejudge any investigation. That is one of the key elements, is to determine the potential for Welsh medium education in the catchment. Until we know that, we don't know. We don't even know if this site is the right site. We may find on investigation that we are looking at numbers of pupils and location of pupils that suggest a different site. We won't know that until we investigate that.
Okay, then that's fine. I'm going to bring David in now, because I'm guessing, David, you're coming in with some finance comment.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just curious where Councillor Aled was getting this £150,000 impact to the delegated schools budget during the period of the review, because I can't quite understand where that's coming from. Because with this school in particular, we've got 76.8 thousand, which is going to cover the school remaining open until the 31st of the 3rd, 23, and that's going to come out of the delegated schools contingency budget. So that's not going to have a direct impact on any other education setting. For the second period in 23-24, the impact's going to be 32,300. Obviously, that'll have an impact on the delegated schools budget, but when you take that over all schools, I think that that's quite manageable without having a major impact on on individual school budgets. And with regard to the maintenance during the period of the review, this is what I was going to attempt to say earlier. The indications are currently that there might be £6,000 needed to treat some asbestos, because my understanding is the boiler's underground there, and hopefully that would address that. If for some reason that doesn't address it, then there's a potential of another 40,000 if they've got to move that boiler above ground. But I can't, and that would come out the school's major improvements programme. So that doesn't come out the delegated budget. So the only impact to the school's delegated budget and any impact on the other schools during the review period would be 32,300. So I think it's a bit misleading to suggest there's £150,000 impact. Just to clear that one up, Chair. Thank you.
I'm gonna bring Galed back in before I come to you, Councillor Gareth.
Yes, can I ask how much is in that contingency budget? I don't think when that contingency budget was pulled together that they were expecting this sort of decision. If a boiler blows up in another school, will they have to go through the winter without any heating? Or, you know, that there's a limit to that contingency budget. What size is it? And if that contingency budget is used up, where will the funding come from afterwards?
Yeah, well, with regard to a boiler blowing up, that wouldn't necessarily come out of the school's contingency budget. The school's major improvements programme might cover that. I don't know, but the contingency budget, some of it's been committed already, but there's more than enough in there to cover these proposed costs, and it would leave a significant amount in the contingency budget. But undoubtedly, obviously, it's going to impact it. But I just wanted to make the point that it's not a direct impact on the delegated school budgets and on individual schools.
Okay, I'm moving on from that now. We haven't really got the clarification we wanted there, but we're clear on different viewpoints. Councillor Gareth.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to thank Councillor Peter for recognising the need for Welsh language here and also hopefully throughout Powys, especially when the knowledge I got with the journey we're going on here in Corinion. Can I just come back now and ask of him, and also a response from the officers, please, Chair? He mentioned, is this the right site for what they're looking to explore with the potential of a new school? When you take in consideration the 46k in the immediate term that Marianne's put into there, Pete's question, is this the right site? Can I ask this question? If the school was closed now, and please, I want to reiterate, nobody wants to close schools, but looking at all these figures, there are a number of questions that concern me. If, as Pete said, is this the right site, and it's not in 12 months, is there any advantage in keeping the school open for 12 months with no pupils in there and then building it in 12 months' time as a Welsh school? Or is it going to work? Is it not going to work? So what is the advantage in keeping it open for a further 12 months, incurring further costs, and then coming to the decision that it is or it isn't the right place when it's going to have a different language there?
Did I see Mary wanting to come in on that, or is that one for that?
Mary?
It wasn't necessarily directly to that. It was going back to the contingency and major improvement question.
We'll come to you again in a minute, Mary. Thank you.
The core element of retaining the school open is it allows a migration through a continuum as English-speaking pupils who are already in the school move through. It provides the capitation and the numbers at the location to make it the move to Welsh medium sustainable without putting undue burden on the budget. That is the main benefit from it.
Gareth?
It's basically, essentially, Gareth, it is the same that Corinion is going through at the moment as the pupils move through the age groups. Welsh speakers come in and you migrate to a fully Welsh medium school rather than essentially opening a school with just one class, 1 year cohort in it.
There's only 2 classes there now.
Chair, if I may come back, how many pupils are currently fluent Welsh in this school? In Corinion, it's about 64%.
I don't have those figures. The highlight is the point I would highlight in respect of this is that if we are looking to grow the Welsh language, we are going to be working in areas where we start with very small numbers, but a commitment from the community to go down that route. If we don't go down that route, we are essentially saying the only place we are going to open Welsh medium schooling is in the areas where there are Welsh speakers at the moment, and we will not achieve our targets. On this site, we have had we see a commitment from the community by establishing a KILC and TRV group. And that commitment is something that suggests, and I stress suggests, that there is potential on this site that may not be present in other parts of East Radnorshire. If we have a commitment to the Welsh language, which I do, and I look to increase Welsh language provision and increase the numbers of parents opting into Welsh when they come from monolingual English families themselves, we are going to have to take some bold decisions. And we are going to have to take some decisions and take some what might be termed by others chances. But I believe if we don't investigate these options, if we don't make attempts to grow the Welsh language, we will be stagnant.
Right, we've got other people wishing to ask questions. It's a good point to bring Bryn in now, Mary. So I'm going to hold you there, if I may. Councillor Bryn. Councillor Bryn, bring your microphone up, please.
Diolch yn iawn. Sylwadau dilys iawn y fanna gan bawb. Mae o'n os da ni yn, mae'n bwysig ofnadwy bod yn cael cyfle i edrych ar y safle ysgol cyfrwng Cymraeg yn Nwyrain maes yfed. Dwi ddim wedi cael yn narbwyllo mae Llanfi Hangel Rhydyson fydd y safle hwnnw, ond fel mae Pete dweud, os da chi eisiau cynnal ysgol yn rhywle, mae'n rhaid i chi cael ysgol gweddol gyflawn a gweithio fo trwy fesul blwyddyn. Mae hwnna'n gwneud rhyfaint o synwyr, ond yn y pen draw, dwi'n siŵr os dyna'r safle orau. Heb fod fynd yn rhy wleidyddol, mae'n bwysig iawn bod ni yn, os da ni yn ystyriaeth, wrth gwrs diben pwyllgor craffu ydy ystyried llesiant addysgol disgyblion yn Mhawys, ac mae yna ar cost ariannol gysylltiedig, ond mae rhaid ni gofio fe wnaed penderfyniad i cadw safle pob ysgol uwchradd trwy bywys yn agored gan y cabinet ddiwethaf, ac oedd hwnna ar draul pob ystyriaeth o cost ac effeithioldeb i disgyblion ac yr effaith ar cyllid Powys. Ac felly, da ni'n beryg iawn o ail ymweld â hwn tro ar ôl tro ym mhob pwyllgor craffu. Ac felly, mae eisiau bod yn ymwybodol o hynny a ceisio bwrw ymlaen trwy'r penderfyniadau sy'n gerin bron ni ar hyn o bryd ac ystyried y pethau yma pob achos. Wel, dyn ni angen gweld llun cyfan, ond sbio ar yr achosion unigol hefyd, ond mae rhaid cofio nad oedd popeth yn fel gyda phenderfyniadau a wnaed yn ystod y 5 mlynedd diwethaf chwaith. OK, diolch.
Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Bryn. I don't think the comment there, just reinforcing of a viewpoint there. Councillor Matt, I'm going to come to you now. You've been waiting long enough. You with us, Councillor Matt? You seem to have disappeared. And Mary, I'm going to bring you in while we're waiting for Councillor Matt. Mary, you were making a comment in relation to contingency.
Yes, clarifying the current budgets for this year and what happens with the contingency fund. So with the major improvements, school major improvements budget, that's a capital budget that currently stands in this year at 4.5 million. The contingency fund was set at the start of the year. That's 555,000. It's already got, I think, commitments of about 288,000 on that so far this year. What we do with the contingency fund, it's top sliced from the school's delegated budget, and then at the end of the year, whatever's left within it then that hasn't been spent on, it is sort of making any changes in terms of the formula funding due to schools, then whatever's left at the end of the year then would be distributed across the schools.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that clarity on those figures. Councillor Allard.
Thank you. Thank you for Mary, for making those points very, very clear. I was trying to make those points. It's actually in the report somewhere, I think, as well, isn't it? That any money that's not funded, not used in the contingency, does go back to the schools at the end of the day. And the major improvement fund, I'm guessing that's more or less all allocated, or at least we've got a huge maintenance backlog across the whole school estate within Powys, and it could be easily spent. I think you quoted £70 million, Councillor Peach, so it could easily be spent quite a few times over. Thank you for that. But I've got to come back to the issue on the WESP. Marianne or Emma, you've got a far greater insight into this than myself. But wasn't there something in the WESP about, or what conditions you need to open a new Welsh school? It doesn't have to be in a populated area or something along those lines. I'm not quite sure. Can you?
Okay, I'll come in there. Yes, ideally we would normally develop new Welsh medium provision in areas where we could guarantee growth. So, and not just as an authority, but all other authorities. If you look at where new Welsh medium schools pop up, they are generally in towns. So that is something that we will need to consider when we do this review as well.
Okay, that's giving you your clarity, Aled?
No, yes, definitely. Thank you.
Catherine, welcome to the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Mine is not so much a question, just more of a comment and observation, really, putting my parent hat on, particularly a parent of children that go to a small rural school. I think a lot of people will welcome a bit of a stay of execution on the school, but my concern is for the health and mental well-being of the children, the teachers, the parents of these schools, where within 2 weeks of the end of a school year, they're now being told that they've got another 12 or potentially got another 12 months at the school, but then there still is that Damocles hanging over them. I'm very concerned that there's an awful lot of grey area here, and just the strain of that kind of never-ending potential of something happening and change happening. And I can just imagine the wear on the teachers and the wear on the parents as they're trying to support the children in this very kind of grey space. And I'd like to suggest, I'm sure that it's already been muted, that if this was to go ahead for a 12-month, that there's a very clear set of deadlines where decisions need to be made for things, so that it's very clearly communicated to the parents and the schools and the teacher. This is for both this point and for part 8, because the last thing we want is to be sitting here in 12 months' time, then talking about these schools again within a couple of weeks of the end of the year, and there's still decisions to be made. It's the last thing that children need. In some ways, they almost need a fresh start straight away than another 12 months of waiting and hanging on.
Catherine, I think it's a well-made point. It's certainly on my list, and sitting here as chair, I'm trying not to make comment, but we do have to consider the welfare of the child and the impact on that child, parents and staff, and I think it's a well-made point. Councillor Pete, we're in a very, very grey area with this report, and I think Catherine makes a very, very relevant point there.
And it's a point I would agree with. We are, because of the necessity of the tight timetable coming to the end of term, have brought this report forward to take a decision on what we are going to do. I've spoken with officers, in fact, today before this meeting, to try to work out appropriate timeframes. The key date that is outside our control is the publication of the lower super output area Welsh language data from the census, which is scheduled to be coming out sometime between October and Christmas. But the timelines that we've spoken about today are very much that we will be aiming to have a decision taken and coming to Cabinet very early in the new year. If the data comes out in early November, we'd be looking at early February. But obviously, the later the data comes out, the later it is. That said, if some of the other work that would obviously need to be undertaken in terms of community and engagement and understanding of demand in the area is coming back with information very early, that could bring forward changes sooner. I think Emma wants to add something to that.
Thanks, Councillor Pete. Chair, is that okay if I come in?
Yeah, no, that's fine. Yeah.
Thank you. I just need to be really clear, and I'm sorry to harp on about the school organisation code. The decision in terms of closing Llanbiangal Rydaithen has been made. The report before us today is one that will go to Cabinet next week about delaying the implementation. It's not changing the result in terms of closure of the school. It is about delaying that implementation. Any proposals that come forward for Welsh medium are a brand new proposal. So they are separate. We just need to be clear about that in the way that from a legal perspective, things are. I am not a lawyer. I'm not an expert in that field, but I've certainly learned a significant amount and would say I'm quite experienced in the school organisation code now, having worked so closely within it, certainly since 2019, and Marianne would be further experienced. I think she's done a life sentence. So we just need to be really clear about that. The decision to close Llanbiangal Rydaithen School has been made. The report that's before us is around delaying the implementation of that decision, and then actually anything around Welsh medium would be a new proposal that would then need to go through the requirements of the school organisation code.
Thank you, Emma. I think we clearly understand that, and that's why we're in such a confusion surrounding this extension. Really, Matt, you are with us now, Councillor Matt.
Thanks, Chair. Apologies, my internet dropped out temporarily, so I may ask a question that may have been covered whilst I was temporarily out of the meeting. But I just wanted, from the sort of the parents and the staff perspective, if you may please, Pete. Obviously, given that there is a stay of execution for a further academic year, that's going to naturally create a level of uncertainty to both parents and staff and other people connected to the school. I just want to ask really what support will be put in place by the council in terms of keeping all those key stakeholders right up to speed with new developments, because my understanding from the schools that are affected by this stay of execution is that the parents are resolute and will stand firm and will not go to other schools and until they're literally dragged off elsewhere, because they firmly believe that those schools provide the best education within that particular area. But what sort of safe measures will be put in place to sort of keep those stakeholders up to speed, please?
We haven't done any work on a communications and engagement plan at this point, because until the decision is taken, that will be taking up officer time that is better used in other areas. The expectation is that there will be proactive engagement with the governing body, with the parents and with the community, and regular reporting on the progress through the period and regular engagement through the period. But the exact process, we're working on very, very short timescales to move this forward. That will come through and will be shared publicly in a way that I'm not at this stage sure exactly how, but it will be shared as part of an early stage within the review process. Lynette, do you have anything that you can bring on in terms of pastoral care aspects, because they're more operational, that you must be going through anyway with some of these schools?
Yeah, as part of the process we've already been through, we were looking at putting effective transition arrangements in place for the children and learners. I did say in the last scrutiny, I myself many years ago was a receiving school, and we did put in effective transition, which are key, and they work really effectively. Where we're at the moment is obviously this term, with the delay that we've already had, and the fact that parents haven't gone through admissions process to take their children to other schools. It's been difficult to arrange that transition, and it has been frustrated for the head teachers and the parents and the staff. So I think that it's clear as we go forward that we need to make sure that we're working with the schools, particularly for me around the pupil well-being, around that transition into other schools should that decision remain next year, as I say. So we need to ensure they have visits to schools. All of that needs to happen, and really you need a full term of that from the Easter to the summer, so that it's really effective, and you've got that pastoral support for staff as well, who may or may not need to look for other work, etc., to have all of those processes in place ready for that. So that's key, in particular for me, pupil well-being, making sure we get that transition right for those learners.
Okay, members, there's really good debate today, but we do need to be moving to some conclusions. I've got Councillor Allard waiting to speak, and Councillor Lucy. I'm going to suggest those are the duration of our speakers. Just on what you've just said, can I just seek some clarification? It's a very simple question. Has any redundancy process been started with any of the staff at the school?
No.
That's good. Thank you. Councillor Allard.
Thank you, Gunvar. I know Emma made it very clear when she spoke last. So as I see it now, there are only two options available at the end of this review, either closure or the school becoming a Welsh medium. There's no likelihood of it continuing as it is now.
Just to be clear, even for the school to become Welsh medium, it needs to close.
Okay.
This English medium school currently.
Yeah, I think that I understand that, Emma, but I think Councillor Allard is asking that it can't reopen as an English medium school.
That's not on the agenda.
No.
So there's £150,000, possibly £150,000 punt here, because you used the word chances before, Councillor Pete. The £150,000 punt here that this school could become a Welsh medium school. And what are the odds on that? So 90% chance or far less? That's my big worry is, and we've just had that discussion about the children, which always should be at the centre of any decision we make.
Okay, I'm going to move on to Councillor Lucy now.
Yeah, I think this should be a quick one. It was just in relation to the fact that if the school will definitely close in a year's time, if a Welsh medium school were to open on that site, I'm guessing from that it probably wouldn't open immediately following the closure of the other school anyway, because the timing wouldn't allow for that. Is that correct or not?
That's correct.
So in that respect, suggesting that the school is kept open in order to transfer to a Welsh medium school actually doesn't work anyway. And I would like to add, I'm not like everybody else. I don't want the schools to close. We want to keep open as many schools as possible, but it just seems to me, as for Aled, that there's a lot of money going into this, and I'm not sure that there's much benefit in the delay. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, I'm going to conclude the debate there, but we do have to make some conclusions of this so that we can send some comment to cabinet. I believe, which is next 2nd of July, is it? Or no, it won't be the 2nd.
Next Tuesday, Gwynfor.
Next Tuesday. Members, what comments would you like to distribute to cabinet, if any? The one thing which I wasn't clear on is that if I could be permitted to ask a question, just to tie up all the boxes, there's no estimation of costs for further aspects of transformation, what the school service would have to do in their consultation and things like that. So would that be an additional cost to the figures which have been branded around or not?
There would be some cost, but
yeah,
it would be minimal. Yeah.
Okay, it's minimal. Right, members, would somebody like to suggest, in view of everybody's heard that debate, what we would like to see proposed to go to cabinet? Councillor Bryn.
Dwi'n meddwl bod ni eisiau cefnogi'n llawn y syniad bod darpariaeth cyfrwng Cymraeg yn cael ei agor yn nwyrain maes yfed. Ond yn ôl yr hyn da ni'n deall, bydd angen cau yr ysgol beth bynnag i gyflawni hynny. Dyna sylw fi.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna develop that, Councillor Bryn, if I want, because we spoke about the immersion and the growth of that school, and Corrine was mentioned how we're developing that. Closure of the school isn't going to allow pupils to grow into the Welsh language. Is that a valid point that we should be making to cabinet?
Yeah. Gwyn, can we not just ask Gwyn to summarise the discussions that we've been having, and then cabinet will get all the points that have been raised today?
If that's the wish of the committee, yes.
And
Councillor Aled.
Just very quickly, Chair. We were criticised by Estyn a number of years ago, a number of reports from Estyn about delay and failure to take decisions. And we've been criticised by the school community at the same level. There was a conference where we had much criticism about the weakness of political decision making. And I think this is possibly the third time Dolau has been through this process. Correct me if I'm wrong. Officers may be able to help because it's been through in previous councils as well. And I just, worried about the impact on the children, another generation of children. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, if you're happy, we'll put a summary together And would it be a suggestion we circulate that to you before we send to Cabinet? Yep. Councillor Peter, I have to say you realise that we as a scrutiny committee are very uncomfortable with this. I think that's the summary that we make, and I'll just leave it from that, and you'll deal with our summary. Members, if there's nothing else to be said on this, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which I currently can't find.
I'm hoping my connection is enough that you'll hear me.
Yeah, Peter, I don't think there's need for any further comment now. I think there's been significant debate, and we'll put a summary together as I concluded. Item 7 on the agenda is our work programme. There is a work programme which has been circulated. It's sparsely populated as you stand, but it gives you an indication of our work going forward.
We do need to have a session, Chair, just to go through what items and have discussions with officers to have an understanding of what's coming to Cabinet and what other items we actually need to be including, so we can populate this and have something set up then for at least the end of this year as well as into next year.
Members, are you happy with that? We are going to have an informal conversation after the duration of this meeting where we can discuss things as we see. Yeah?
Yeah, happy with that.
Is everybody happy with the mechanics of that work program before we put, obviously then it'll be populated after? Good.
Yes, thank you, Chair.
Right, thank you. Item 8 on your agenda. It's the Llanbedr Church and Wheel School. Members, some of the comments that we have asked and questions will be relevant to this. Needless to say, we need to consider this give it a due scrutiny. Wyn, is the suggestion we go into confidential? Matt, yes, I apologise.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I probably should duck out at this point, given my declared interest.
Yes, certainly. I'm going to ask Wyn now to put you into another room, a virtual room, obviously, and we'll call you back in on the conclusion of that.
Councillor Matt's now in the waiting room, Chair.
Thank you, Wyn. Wyn, looking for a bit of advice. Am I looking forward to go into confidential session immediately?
No, Chair, you can discuss the majority of the report in open session. The confidential appendix, if anybody wants to discuss that in any detail, then we'll have to pass the resolution and go into confidence on that. If members just want to talk about the global figure within there without going into any detail, that's fine. But I would remind members just to be very careful not to start sort of discussing any particular items within the appendix.
Thank you. Are we all clear on that, or does somebody want some guidance? Good. I'll try and keep you on the straight and narrow. Members, the report's before you. I'm going to return to Councillor Peat now to give him an opportunity with an explanation of the report, if that's okay, Councillor Peat.
Thank you, Chair. This, as you say, is the second report, which, while similar in nature, is different in reasoning. Throughout the entire process, there has been emphasis on the benefits of catchment reviews. Ustragan Lice has been cited a number of times as how everyone went through the system together and everyone came out the other end, and the benefit for that. In respect to Llanbedr, the proposal came forward as a single item, but in the last 6 months, there has been a number of changes within the catchment, with changes in staffing at other schools within the catchment that are opening up the opportunity for more significant transformation within the area. With that in mind, again, as this area will now be a priority because of the need to put other changes in place, We are looking forward to move forward to, again, a review in this instance of the entire catchment, including the Llanbedr site within that review, to ensure that options that may be considered in a wider catchment review can be considered before the Llanbedr site is formally closed. Again, this is something that we will be looking to move forward with quickly, and will be a priority for the transformation team. Sorry, I've been distracted by the comments coming up in the side window. This is a priority for the transformation team and is part of the wider commitment to gain a better understanding of provision needs and the best way to deliver the provision within what is quite a complex catchment in light of its proximity to schools from two other authorities. So that is the basis for this delay. You have all of the documentation laid out in front of you, and I open it to questions.
Members, I'll open it for questions.
My apologies.
Councillor Lucy.
Thank you, Chair. Pete, I just wanted to ask why it seems that this closure wasn't referred to Welsh ministers within 28 days, which is something that would have had to have happened if the closure was to go ahead. So my understanding is that we've missed the boat now anyway. Is that not correct?
There was an option for Church in Wales to move forward with an objection that would go to the minister. That was not taken up, but because there was the expectation amongst officers that such an application would come in, processes were not moved forward, and therefore we are in the same position as we are with Llanfihangel-Rhydyth, where redundancy and other processes have not moved forward, so that the earliest the school could actually close in respect of staffing would be Christmas, the end of the Christmas term, and therefore a number of the arguments around staffing that I advanced in the previous discussion would apply here. Officers, as this happened in the period during Purda, is there any officers wish to add to what I said, or have I summarised things accurately?
Go on, Marianne, sorry. I was reading the report then.
No, it's fine. Just to say, just to clarify, as Councillor Peter saying, Llanbedr is a Church in Wales aided school, voluntary aided school, and as such, they can make a referral to the Welsh Government following the final decision by Cabinet. But they have the governing body and the diocese can refer to Welsh Government, saying why they object or why they disagree with it, with the decision. We were notified by the diocese that they were going to make a referral, but no referral was made to Welsh Government. The Welsh Government confirmed that to us in April, following the 28 days. So that's why there's a delay there.
Okay.
So I guess, I mean, it's disappointing in two respects. One, that perhaps we should have not taken the word that they were going to make a referral, because as a consequence of that, we've lost a lot of time. But also the report doesn't actually make it clear, or it didn't to me anyway, that the changes that we're looking at are in part because the school's going to stay open longer than had originally been anticipated anyway. I think we need to be completely upfront about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lucy. Margaret.
Yeah, just a comment. I was not, thank you for that clarity, because I was not aware that the diocese had not done that, because normally the diocese that I'm more involved with is St Asaph. So I think it's something that personally I need to, because in my role, because I do feel something that was quite important, that hadn't actually actually being acted upon. But that's only about that. My only concern other than that is, again, the impact on pupils and parents of all the issues, and again, delaying things and the uncertainty and communication around it all for the different groups is so vital now.
Thank you, Margaret. Thank you for that clarification from the diocese. Members, other comments? Members, while you're formulating your comments, I'm really unclear on the cost that this is now, because, and again, I'm trying not to stray into any confidential matters, but there is a larger cost to keeping this school open. I'm leaving it at Councillor Peter.
I'm worried about what I say in relate of the confidential issue.
Don't make any confidential.
I'll focus on the cost in respect to staffing. As a result of what we've just heard, redundancy notices have not been issued to staff. That means that the earliest they will be that delays things by a term. So we're already incurring a significant element of the cost savings that were being made. Those staff will still have to be paid. So that element is there. So the key elements. Sorry, I'm going to need to take the chat off, because when people are putting comments in the chat, it's distracting me and I'm losing focus. Sorry, could you, Wim, my sincere apologies, could you ask the question again so I can refocus?
I'm reflecting on our previous comments and the costs involved in the previous school. The cost, I understand, I don't want to stray into the confidential item, but there is a more significant cost surrounding this school to postpone it for 12 months.
Marianne, can I look to you to explain the costs a little? I've got so embedded into the Llanfihangel Rydaithon discussions that I've lost the threads on the financing for this one, so need to go back and read through the document again.
I'm going to defer to Mary.
I thought you might. So in terms of Llanbedr, because of the timing of the decision that was made, and that it was after school budgets were issued, the funding for the entire 22-23 financial year were distributed to were delegated to the schools, and then we've reissued a budget just for 5 months once the decision was made. So that's the 59,000 that's set out in paragraph 4.3. What the additional revenue costs then for future years would be the 39,500 for the rest of the academic year then, in terms of the recommendation within this report. And then I think in terms of the major improvements side of things, I think there's a total cost there of 111.8 thousand, some of which may not need to be done within 1 year, but I think about 98,000 would need to be spent within the year, or at least, yeah.
Thank you. Lynette's looking to come in. Thank you, Mary.
Yeah, just in terms of the Councillor Pete mentioned about the staffing there, in terms of teacher pay and conditions, indeed, the process is longer. And so when you're looking at HR processes at this point in time, the teachers would need to be in post until Christmas at the very least. So just the teachers pay and condition processes take longer than teaching assistants, just for your information there. So as it stands at the moment, no redundancy has been issued. So the teachers and indeed the head teachers as well of the schools would still be in post, and that process would need to take place as per the teachers' pay and conditions.
Thank you, Lynette. Councillor Allard, followed by Councillor Ian.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just very quickly. So, you know, the potential cost here is north of the previous school. But how much of that could be saved if the process was rather than a full year, just the one term? You know, I'm wondering how much of that could be potentially saved. And if it did go through to the 12 months, what are the potential outcomes there? Again, is it just delay in closure, or are there other potential outcomes? I see another catchment review is sort of hinted at, talked about. We got catchment reviews coming out of our ears. I'm wondering whether the capacity within the MS team is there to carry out all these catchment reviews, because it is, I know it's a big piece of work to do a catchment review within such a small timescale. So I got concerns there, because if we're doing a job of work, it's important that we do it properly. I do wonder, you know, many of my comments from the previous school are valid here as well, and the thoughts of our regulators, if they're seeing us, the council, failing to take difficult decisions again, what their thoughts would be. But I can see Marianne, Lynette's got her hand up. Perhaps she could, because I did want to ask a question about why these two schools are not others that have been closed fairly recently as well. Thank you.
Yeah, Lynette, I'm going to go to Councillor Ian first, because you may be able to pick up on both points. Councillor Ian.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to touch a little bit on what Aled was finalising on there, really, and that is that, you know, we're looking at catchment reviews for 2 of the schools that are facing closure, but not the third, and that's Craddock, which is also part of the Brecon catchment. So I'd like to know, really, from Councillor Peat, why the Brecon catchment isn't being reviewed, particularly as it's much bigger schools that are at stake. So that's the first question. But I got to be honest, overall, my feelings, and I hope this can be passed to Cabinet, really, are the same for this as the previous item, and that is that we had an election in May, and the new administration were elected on their commitment to stop the closure of these schools. They're not doing that, and they've obviously decided they're not going to do that, but rather than receiving public criticism, they're just kicking the can down the road, and it's as simple as that to me, I'm afraid. It's appalling. Sorry,
Thank you, Councillor Ian. I'm going to go to Lynette now, and before I return to Councillor Peat. Thanks, Lynette.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of points there. Just to mention again the staffing issue that we talked about earlier, about the fact that the redundancy processes, etc., haven't started. But just to factually as well, in light of that, teachers' pay and conditions as they are, the process needs to be followed correctly. But there are opportunities for staff to be redeployed in the local authority should the decision be, you know, to not delay whatever. That's the situation. We have had instances in the past where sometimes school is closed at Christmas, for example, and we have had staff redeployed in the local authority to work either at other schools or within the local authority as system leaders or teachers, whatever that may be. So there are opportunities there, just for your information as well. In terms of Eston and what Councillor Allard brought up, we do know, just to remind ourselves again, factually, that you know, in 2019 we did have Eston in, we did have the recommendation, and we did have in October, November 2021, which is last year, we did have the endorsement from Eston about all of the recommendations within that report, that we were making strong progress. So that's factual, that's where we are. And, you know, as we look at everything, you know, that's where we are in terms of Eston. They still visit the local authority on a regular basis and are still concerned, you know, as they do every local authority, looking at the programme for transformation. So that's where we are factually in terms of Estyn and the recommendation around transformation.
Thank you, Lynette. That's great clarification there. Councillor Peter, have you had a chance to gather your thoughts there? Or
Yeah, I have. Thank you, Gwynfor. There was one other point that Al had made, and that was around capacity within Emma's team. I think it's worth pointing out that headship arrangements in 2 other schools within this catchment are fluid at the moment, which offers up an opportunity. And this area was already being focused on with or without the introduction of the Llanbedr element of the discussion. So this was an area that officers are already looking at. This just expands the scope of that and opens up the potential in that review to look at other opportunities that were not necessarily presenting themselves previously. In terms of Councillor Ian's comments, we're here today looking at 2 particular school proposals, and I'm not looking to expand beyond that. It would be inappropriate for me to do so in the light of the ongoing situation in respect of Craddock.
Okay, there was a clear question or why you had identified those 2 schools, and we've all been had sight of the leader's email to Councillor McIntosh in relation to that. I think it's a relevant question. Why aren't you expanding that into all catchment areas?
Because there are the outline that we have put forward in terms of the vision for education within Powys is one of schools on single school on multiple sites, and phase 1 of the Craddock Mount Street proposal is consistent with that vision.
Thank you. Councillor David is waiting in the wings. Councillor Aled mentioned about the viewpoint of Estyn in the whole process. Are yourself or David wishing to comment on that?
I'll comment on respect of Estyn. We will be looking, if Lynette has not already done so, to be reassuring Estyn that these are specific reviews and that the programme as a whole is not affected. And in fact, I've asked Lynette and Emma within the grounds of the school's organisational code to move forward at an accelerated pace as much as resources will allow, so that we can get decisions taken and actions moving forward as soon as practically possible.
Thank you. Councillor David, apologies, you've been waiting a significant time.
No problem, Chair, thank you. I've just been looking at the 2 proposals and putting some of the numbers together, and just for clarity, really, with regard to the delegated funding, if you take the 2 proposals, the actual impact is going to be £200,900, but £120,000 of that approximately is going to come from the contingency fund. Now, I can understand how some people might think, well, all right, whatever's left of the contingency fund would eventually go back into schools. But the contingency is there, and there's a strong possibility that it's going to be spent. It might be overspent. But the important thing to remember as well is that schools have already set their budgets, and any money that might be left in this contingency would be extra money. So with that regard, whereas extra money would be welcome, it's not in the current budgets, and schools are currently working to those budgets. So the actual impact to delegated funding would only be about 800,000. Would be only be about 80,000. With regard to the maintenance, if you take the 2 proposals, there's a potential impact of 137.8 thousand. But there's a £20,000 discrepancy actually between 2 reports, the confidential report, which we don't want to go into, and the other one. But I've taken the lower figure, and £110,000 of that might not materialise. So potentially it's only 27,800. I think it's just important to realise that, because there seems to be an implication that school delegated budgets as they stand, and the current budgets that have been allocated to schools, are going to be impacted by this huge amount of money, which is misleading. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that clarity. Councillor Allen.
I don't, to be fair, David, I don't think I talked about delegated budget particularly. I was talking about the delegated and potential other capital costs as well. And you know full well there's a significant backlog in maintenance. That money could be very well used across the school estate. And many schools do carry a significant deficit within their delegated budget. So whatever that can be done to reduce that deficit across the schools in Powys, so much the better.
The point I'd make there, Chair, school budgets are looking quite healthy going into this year, which covers the period of the review. So we're fortunate in that respect. And the other point I'm making, if we're looking at a historic £70 million deficit as far as school repairs are concerned, potentially £20,000, you know, I think we can afford to sort of put that to one side to allow these parents to take part in this review in some way or another. That's the point I'm making. It's just a little bit misleading to suggest that we can have this huge impact when it really isn't there.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. Members, I have no further questions. I'm looking for advice now, whether to go into confidential session to discuss further the financial costs on this matter. I'm a little bit uncomfortable on one of the things, and I do have a question to ask. But I'm looking for the guidance of the rest of the committee, please. Members, are you content with all the questions? I'm taking that as a yes.
Remember, if there's a question that you want to ask, that you
I'm just very unclear on something.
Maybe we should move into confidential session so that you can clarify what you want to clarify.
If the committee would pass the resolution, Chair, I'll stop the recording.
Yeah, members, can somebody propose that we go into confidential session?
I'll propose that.
Seconder?
Happy to second.
Thank you. All in favour? Members, we'll stop the recording now, and we can speak about the confidential paper before us.